Deep space. A routine mission turns into a nightmare. The crew of the starship, Erebus, thought they were alone, but something else was hiding in the shadows, something alien, something deadly. As fear spreads through the corridors, survival becomes the only goal. But how do you fight an enemy you can't see? How do you escape when every corner holds a new threat? This is a story of terror, courage, and the will to survive against all odds. If you crave spine-chilling sci-fi horror, this is the tale for you. Hit that subscribe button now to dive deeper into the unknown, and don't forget to turn off the lights. The starship, Erebus, drifted silently through the void, its sleek hull glinting faintly under the distant light of a dying star. For weeks, the journey had been uneventful, a routine supply run to a remote mining colony on the edge of known space. The crew went about their tasks with mechanical precision, lulled into complacency by the monotony of interstellar travel. Captain Voss spent most of her time reviewing flight logs, while Engineer Kale tinkered endlessly with the ship's aging systems. Medical Officer Nira tended to minor injuries sustained during maintenance work, and Security Chief Rodek patrolled the corridors with practiced vigilance. Even Communications Specialist Lyra found little excitement beyond static-filled transmissions from distant outposts. But then came the first sign that something was wrong. It began subtly, a faint vibration running through the deck plates, barely perceptible at first. Attributing it to yet another malfunction, no one paid much attention. Then there were the odd readings on the environmental sensors, fluctuations in temperature and air pressure confined to specific sections of the ship. By the time anyone decided to investigate, the subtle disturbances had escalated into outright anomalies. Lights flickered without explanation, doors sealed shut without command inputs, and strange, wet sounds echoed through ventilation shafts late at night. It wasn't until Engineer Kale discovered the first corpse that panic truly set in. One of the maintenance drones lay crumpled in a storage bay, its metallic frame twisted beyond recognition. Whatever had done this possessed strength far beyond anything human or machine. Worse still, traces of organic residue clung to the wreckage, emitting a faint phosphorescent glow. No one could identify the substance, nor did anyone want to speculate too loudly about what it might mean. Captain Voss called an emergency meeting in the mess hall, her expression grim as she addressed the assembled crew. She outlined the situation succinctly. Something was aboard the Erebus Dash, something not accounted for in any manifest or pre-flight inspection. Initial theories ranged from rogue bioexperiments escaping containment to some form of parasitic organism hitching a ride within the cargo hold. None of these explanations offered comfort, however, especially when paired with the growing list of inexplicable incidents occurring throughout the vessel. Security Chief Rodek proposed sealing off affected areas and conducting systematic sweeps, armed with whatever makeshift weapons they could cobble together. His plan seemed logical, even necessary, yet it carried undeniable risks. Splitting up would leave individuals vulnerable, and confronting an unknown adversary with improvised tools felt foolhardy at best. Still, inaction posed an even greater danger. With each passing hour, the entity, or entities, grew bolder, venturing closer to inhabited zones. Already, personal belongings had gone missing, replaced by disturbing mementos left behind. Claw marks etched into bulkheads, patches of slime glistening ominously on control panels. As preparations got underway, tension simmered just below the surface. Everyone moved cautiously, eyes darting toward every shadow, ears straining for telltale noises. Conversations became clipped, punctuated by nervous laughter or forced optimism. Beneath it all lurked the gnawing certainty that they were no longer masters of their own domain. Something else claimed dominion over the Erebus Dash, and it showed no signs of retreating. The first sweep took place in Sector C-7, a labyrinthine network of storage compartments and auxiliary machinery. Armed with plasma torches and shock batons, Rodek led a small team through narrow passageways bathed in eerie green emergency lighting. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally loud, drowned out occasionally by the hiss of leaking coolant or groans of stressed metal. Despite their resolve, unease crept steadily into their ranks. Every corner turned revealed nothing but empty space, every hatch open led only to more silence. Yet the absence of visible threats proved almost worse than direct confrontation. Imagination filled the gaps, conjuring visions of lurking horrors poised to strike. When the group finally stumbled upon evidence of intrusion, a shredded cryopod liner smeared with viscous fluid, their nerves snapped. Chaos erupted as shouts reverberated through the confined area, weapons raised instinctively toward imagined foes. Only Rodek's commanding voice restored order, though his own hands trembled slightly around the grip of his modified rifle. Back in the safety of the main living quarters, the team debriefed the rest of the crew. Speculation ran rampant, fueled by fragments of information pieced together from scattered clues. Some argued the intruders must be intelligent, citing deliberate sabotage of critical systems. Others believed them driven purely by instinct, hunting blindly for sustenance or shelter. What remained clear, however, was their lethality. Whatever these beings were, they operated with ruthless efficiency, exploiting weaknesses both physical and psychological. Medical Officer Nira examined samples collected from the cryopod incident, scrutinizing slides under a microscope with painstaking care. Her initial findings shocked even her seasoned mind. The gelatinous material appeared to contain traces of DNA unlike anything cataloged in scientific databases. More alarming still was its behavior outside the body. Exposed to oxygen, the substance exhibited rapid decomposition, releasing volatile compounds capable of corroding nearby surfaces. Further analysis revealed additional properties: high conductivity, adaptive molecular structure, and apparent resistance to extreme temperatures. These traits suggested not merely biological adaptation but technological integration, an unsettling hybrid of flesh and machine. Could these creatures represent remnants of an advanced civilization, perhaps victims of their own experiments gone awry? Or were they engineered deliberately, designed as weapons of war unleashed accidentally upon unsuspecting travelers? While Nira wrestled with questions lacking answers, others grappled with immediate practical concerns. Supplies dwindled rapidly as paranoia prompted hoarding behaviors among the crew. Arguments broke out over ration distributions, exacerbated by sleep deprivation and mounting stress levels. Trust eroded quickly, replaced by suspicion and blame. Each crew member harbored private fears, convinced secretly that someone else might harbor guilt, or worse, collusion with the invaders. Amidst this escalating turmoil, Captain Voss struggled to maintain cohesion. Leadership demanded decisiveness, yet every choice carried catastrophic potential consequences. Should they attempt contact with external authorities, risking exposure if communications failed entirely? Or focus resources solely on self-defense, accepting isolation is preferable to annihilation? Every decision weighed heavily, burdened by uncertainty and dread. Engineer Kale devised a desperate solution, repurposing surplus power cells into improvised explosives. If conventional means couldn't dislodge the intruders, perhaps brute force could drive them away permanently. Working tirelessly alongside communications specialist Lyra, he rigged detonators using scavenged components, testing configurations in isolated chambers to minimize risk. Success hinged precariously on timing and placement. Missteps invited disaster rather than deliverance. Meanwhile, Rodek coordinated strategic planning sessions, mapping potential entry points and chokeholds where ambushes might prove effective. He advocated dividing forces into smaller units, maximizing coverage while minimizing casualties. Though controversial, his approach gained traction as alternatives dried up. Reluctantly, Voss approved deployment plans, assigning teams based on skill sets and compatibility. Preparations culminated in a tense standoff near the engine room, chosen due to its central location and robust defenses. Barricades erected from spare parts created makeshift fortifications, bolstered by tripwires rigged to trigger alarms upon breach. Morale fluctuated wildly between grim determination and abject despair, underscored by whispered prayers and muttered curses alike. When the moment arrived, anticipation crackled palpably through the air. Weapons primed, hearts pounding, the crew braced themselves for battle. Somewhere deep within the bowels of the Erebus Dash, unseen adversaries stirred, sensing prey cornered and ripe for slaughter. Time slowed to agonizing increments, each second stretching infinitely until finally, inevitably, violence erupted. The discovery of the hive-like structures came unexpectedly during a routine inspection of the ship's lower decks. Engineer Kale, accompanied by Security Chief Rodek, had ventured into an area previously deemed inaccessible due to structural damage. What they found defied comprehension: pulsating organic growths embedded within the walls, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. The formations resembled veins or arteries, branching out in intricate patterns that seemed to pulse in rhythm with some unseen heartbeat. Kale immediately recognized the implications. These were not random infestations, but part of a larger organism. The alien presence aboard the Erebus wasn't just a collection of rogue creatures, it was a single entity, spreading and adapting, using the ship itself as both shelter and sustenance. Samples taken from the growths confirmed Neera's earlier suspicions. The material was alive, reactive, and highly invasive. Worse still, the bioelectric signals emanating from the structures suggested communication, a network of sorts, linking disparate parts of the ship together. Back in the main quarters, the revelation sparked heated debate. Some argued for immediate destruction of the infected areas, even if it meant compromising critical systems. Others cautioned against such drastic measures, fearing retaliation from the entity if provoked. Captain Voss listened silently, weighing the options as her crew fractured further under the strain. Trust eroded faster than ever, with accusations flying about who might have inadvertently allowed the contamination to spread. Amidst the chaos, one fact remained undeniable. The aliens weren't merely passengers, they were colonizers, intent on claiming the Erebus as their own. And they showed no signs of stopping. As tensions mounted, paranoia reached fever pitch. Personal belongings disappeared overnight, replaced by grotesque mementos left behind, twisted fragments of metal, unidentifiable slime trails, or faint claw marks etched into bulkheads. Each new incident fueled speculation about spies among the crew, saboteurs working covertly to aid the invaders. Accusations flew recklessly, tearing apart what little unity remained. Medical officer Neera bore the brunt of this distrust, her role as analyst making her privy to sensitive data. Rumors circulated that she had tampered with samples to downplay the threat, or worse, deliberately misled the crew about the true nature of the intruders. Her protests fell on deaf ears, drowned out by fear and anger. Isolated and ostracized, she retreated to her lab, seeking solace in work while grappling with the weight of responsibility. Meanwhile, Lyra intercepted fragmented transmissions originating from deep within the ship. The signals were garbled, almost indecipherable, but certain patterns hinted at intelligence rather than randomness. Could the aliens be attempting communication? Or was this merely another ploy to confuse and divide? The uncertainty gnawed at her, leaving her torn between hope and dread. Captain Voss intervened decisively, imposing strict protocols to restore order. Curfews were enforced. Movement restricted to essential personnel only. Yet compliance proved difficult when trust had evaporated entirely. Every shadow held menace, every sound a potential harbinger of doom. The once cohesive team now operated as individuals, united only by shared terror. Engineer Kale proposed a radical solution, severing key sections of the ship to isolate the infestation. By jettisoning compromised modules, they could potentially starve the organism of resources and force it into retreat or extinction. It was a risky gamble, requiring precise calculations and flawless execution. Failure would leave them stranded in space, vulnerable to both environmental hazards and continued attacks. Rodek voiced strong objections, arguing that containment offered better odds than outright confrontation. His experience with security breaches taught him caution, especially against unknown adversaries. A direct assault might provoke aggression beyond their capacity to handle. Still, he acknowledged the logic behind Kale's plan, however grim its prospects. Voss sided reluctantly with Kale, authorizing preparations for the operation. Teams worked tirelessly, reinforcing bulkheads and rerouting power to ensure minimal disruption during separation. Morale plummeted as reality sank in. This was no longer about survival alone, but sacrifice. Lives hung precariously in balance, dependent on split-second decisions and sheer luck. On the eve of implementation, strange occurrences intensified. Lights flickered erratically, airlocks malfunctioned without warning, and eerie whispers echoed through ventilation shafts. Whether coincidence or deliberate interference, the timing couldn't have been worse. Doubt crept insidiously into everyone's minds, sowing seeds of doubt about whether they stood any chance at all. The operation commenced under a pall of foreboding. Crew members executed their roles mechanically, movements stiff with tension as alarms blared intermittently throughout the ship. Each step brought them closer to irreversible action, yet hesitation lingered like poison in their veins. No one spoke aloud, though thoughts screamed louder than words ever could. At the designated moment, bulkheads sealed shut with a resounding clang, sealing off entire sections from the rest of the vessel. Explosive charges detonated precisely, severing connections and propelling detached modules into the void. For a brief instant, silence reigned supreme, a fragile pause before fate delivered its verdict. Then came the backlash. Systems across the ship faltered simultaneously, plunging corridors into darkness as emergency backups struggled to compensate. From the depths of the remaining hull, unearthly screeches reverberated, chilling blood and freezing hearts. The aliens had anticipated their move, retaliating with ferocity unmatched by previous encounters. Panic erupted as survivors scrambled to regroup, pursued relentlessly by shadowy figures moving with unnatural speed. Weapons discharged wildly, illuminating fleeting glimpses of elongated limbs and jagged exoskeletons. Fear drove instincts primal and raw, overriding rational thought. Amidst the carnage, alliances shifted unpredictably, loyalty tested to breaking points. In the aftermath of the failed operation, casualties mounted rapidly. Bodies littered corridors, mutilated beyond recognition by claws and teeth sharper than any blade. Those fortunate enough to escape sought refuge in fortified zones, barricading themselves behind layers of steel and circuitry. Desperation bred ingenuity, prompting makeshift traps and ambush points designed to thin enemy ranks. Yet morale crumbled under relentless assault. Hope dwindled with each passing hour, replaced by resignation and despair. Even Captain Voss, steadfast until now, began showing cracks in her composure. Decisions grew erratic, marked by impulsive orders and contradictory directives. Leadership wavered precariously, leaving others to pick up slack where possible or abandon altogether. Nira continued analyzing recovered samples, driven by obsession bordering on madness. Her findings revealed disturbing truths. The aliens adapted rapidly, evolving traits specifically tailored to counter human defenses. Their resilience stemmed not solely from biology but also technology, integrated seamlessly into their physiology. This hybrid nature rendered traditional tactics ineffective, demanding innovative strategies instead. Lyra intercepted more transmissions, piecing together fragments into coherent messages. Patterns emerged suggesting rudimentary language structure, albeit alien in syntax and semantics. Translation efforts yielded ambiguous results, hinting at negotiation attempts rather than outright hostility. Uncertainty clouded interpretation, leaving room for both optimism and skepticism alike. A daring plan took shape in response to Lyra's discoveries. If the aliens communicated, perhaps dialogue offered salvation where violence failed. Using modified transmitters, she crafted responses mimicking detected frequencies, broadcasting cautiously worded queries into the ether. Initial reactions proved inconclusive, eliciting static-filled replies devoid of clear meaning. Patience wore thin as frustration mounted, exacerbated by ongoing assaults testing endurance limits. Despite setbacks, persistence paid off eventually. Repeated exchanges gradually refined understanding, establishing tentative rapport fraught with peril. Miscommunication loomed constantly, threatening catastrophic misunderstandings at every turn. Yet progress persisted incrementally, fostering fragile trust amidst pervasive mistrust. Simultaneously, Kale devised contingency plans leveraging insights gained from prolonged exposure. Adapting earlier designs, he constructed portable EMP devices capable of disabling biological electronic hybrids temporarily. Deployment required precision timing and strategic positioning, factors complicating execution significantly. Success depended heavily on cooperation, scarce commodity amid prevailing discord. Preparations culminated in coordinated effort combining diplomacy and defense. Teams assembled cautiously, armed with knowledge gleaned from prior failures alongside newfound determination born of desperation. As final arrangements concluded, anticipation coiled tightly around frayed nerves, awaiting inevitable confrontation looming inexorably ahead. The diplomatic breakthrough came unexpectedly, shattering the fragile tension that had gripped the Erebus for days. Through Lyra's painstaking efforts to decode the alien transmissions, a pattern emerged, a sequence of signals that seemed to convey intent rather than aggression. The aliens were not mindless predators. They were desperate survivors, their hive structure failing and their numbers dwindling. Their attacks on the crew stemmed not from malice but from an instinctual drive to protect their collapsing ecosystem, which had inadvertently merged with the ship's systems. This revelation struck a chord within the crew, forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths. Were they truly so different from these creatures? Both species fought for survival in the harsh expanse of space, driven by primal instincts and limited resources. Yet understanding did not equate to trust. While some advocated for peaceful coexistence, others remained wary, convinced that the aliens' motives could shift at any moment. Captain Voss found herself caught between these factions, her leadership tested as never before. A tentative truce was proposed. The crew would cease attempts to destroy the hive if the aliens halted their assaults. To solidify this agreement, Lyra broadcasted a carefully constructed message, embedding mathematical constants and universal symbols to signify goodwill. Hours passed in agonizing silence, punctuated only by the faint hum of the ship's failing systems. Then, finally, a response arrived, a series of modulated tones interpreted as acknowledgement. But peace proved precarious. Not everyone aboard the Erebus believed in the alien sincerity. Suspicion festered, particularly among those who had lost friends or family to the invaders. Trust eroded further when sabotage attempts targeting critical systems were discovered, raising questions about whether betrayal came from within their own ranks or perhaps even from the aliens themselves. Betrayal struck swiftly and brutally, unraveling the fragile ceasefire almost immediately. During a routine maintenance check, Engineer Kale stumbled upon evidence of tampering with the ship's core reactor. Someone, or something, had deliberately weakened containment fields, risking catastrophic meltdown. Panic spread like wildfire as accusations flew unchecked, dividing the already fractured crew into warring factions. Rodek spearheaded an investigation, combing through surveillance logs and cross-referencing personnel movements. His findings pointed to no single culprit, suggesting instead a coordinated effort involving multiple parties. Whether human or alien, the saboteurs operated with chilling precision, exploiting weaknesses both mechanical and psychological. Amidst this turmoil, Nira made a startling discovery. Analyzing fresh samples collected near the reactor, she identified traces of alien biomatter fused with synthetic compounds, not unlike the materials used in the improvised EMP devices Kale had been developing. This fusion suggested collaboration, implying that certain crew members might have allied themselves with the invaders. Motives ranged from misguided idealism to outright coercion, blurring lines between victim and perpetrator. Captain Voss faced an impossible choice: root out the traitors and risk destabilizing what little unity remained, or ignore the betrayal and focus solely on survival. Her decision ultimately favored transparency, though it came at great personal cost. Confrontations turned violent, fracturing alliances irreparably. Blood stained the corridors once more, mingling with alien ichor as chaos consumed the Erebus entirely. With time running out and the reactor teetering on the brink of failure, Kale devised a final gambit: a concentrated EMP blast aimed directly at the central hive structure. Unlike previous attempts, this operation required surgical precision, targeting specific nodes integral to the aliens' bioelectric network. Success hinged on timing, coordination, and sheer luck, all factors stacked heavily against them. Preparations unfolded amidst simmering hostility, each step fraught with peril. Teams worked in isolation, distrust preventing meaningful cooperation. Supplies dwindled rapidly, forcing ration cuts that left everyone physically and emotionally drained. Yet desperation bred resolve, driving individuals beyond perceived limits. As deployment neared, strange phenomena intensified. Lights flickered erratically, airlocks malfunctioned without warning, and eerie whispers echoed through ventilation shafts. Whether coincidence or deliberate interference, the timing couldn't have been worse. Doubt crept insidiously into everyone's minds, sowing seeds of doubt about whether they stood any chance at all. When the moment arrived, anticipation crackled palpably through the air. Weapons primed, hearts pounding, the crew braced themselves for battle. Somewhere deep within the bowels of the Erebus Dash, unseen adversaries stirred, sensing prey cornered and ripe for slaughter. Time slowed to agonizing increments, each second stretching infinitely until finally, inevitably, violence erupted. The final confrontation unfolded in a maelstrom of fire and fury. Plasma torches clashed with razor-sharp claws, sparks flying as steel met chitin in brutal combat. Shadows danced chaotically under strobing emergency lights, obscuring friend from foe in a haze of smoke and steam. Screams filled the air, blending seamlessly with unearthly screeches that chilled blood and froze hearts. Kale activated the EMP device just as planned, unleashing a pulse of energy that rippled outward like a shockwave. Alien forms convulsed violently, bioluminescent glow dimming as their hybrid systems faltered under electromagnetic assault. For a brief instant, victory seemed within reach, a fleeting glimpse of salvation amidst overwhelming despair. But triumph came at a terrible price. Structural integrity failed catastrophically, hull breaches sucking oxygen-starved air into the void. Survivors scrambled desperately toward escape pods, abandoning everything behind in frantic bids for freedom. Bodies littered corridors, mutilated beyond recognition by claws and teeth sharper than any blade. In the end, only fragments remained, remnants of a crew torn apart by fear, mistrust, and sacrifice. As the last pod jettisoned into the abyss, its occupants transmitted warnings to distant outposts, hoping their harrowing tale might save others from similar fates. Behind them, the Erebus drifted silently through endless night, tombstone adrift in cosmic seas, bearing silent witness to humanity's fragility and resilience alike. If you've been captivated by this thrilling tale of survival against unimaginable odds, don't miss out on more epic adventures waiting just beyond the horizon. Subscribe today to stay tuned for upcoming releases and join us as we journey deeper into realms unknown, where danger lurks around every corner and courage defines destiny.